The clergy gap, when I talk about the clergy gap, let me just take you quickly through this graphic. The Church of the Nazarene, we went back about 20 or 30 years, about 3 decades, and we explored the design of clergy development in Africa. Let me say, if you look here, we have 4,350 clergy ordained and licensed, and they serve a total number of 8,177. Immediately, you can see the gap that is developed. And so when we talk about the clergy gap, we are talking not so much in the South. As you can see, we have 872 licensed and ordained ministers, and we have 911 active churches in the Southern Africa fields. We're not so concerned about how that develops. Our concern is here in the West African Anglophone, Francophone countries. We're looking at in the East African and the Central. If you look at the discrepancies in terms of the way in which the numbers add up, we are desperately trying to educate and to push so that we'll be able to say we have far more churches being planted than we can shape and raise Christian leaders in these fields. When I had a conversation, we called together a group of people that represent all of these different fields, and we asked them, why do you think we have this clergy gap? What are the causes for this disparity in the numbers? One was that there are delays in ordination because courses in these schools are not offered regularly, so people don't get to finish their course of study. Number two, ordinations are delayed as records have not been up to date. And thankfully, through the Genexus program, we're now able to create and sustain those databases. But that's very new. That's not been an old fixture. That's just a new addition. And so until we are able to do that sufficiently, many students have not had their data up to date, administratively speaking. In terms of the requirements, somehow the goalposts move because we've had situations where in some countries, people were given the green light to say you can go ahead and pursue a 24-month degree. Obviously, for those of you who work with the ICOSAC, the International Course of Study Administration, that advisory committee, you would know that we don't work on a 24-month course of study. We work on a 36-month course of study. And so while certain countries say you can do a 24-month diploma, we have a regulation that says, no, you have to finish a 3-year diploma. And so those areas that are ambiguous, whether it's a national framework or the church's stipulation, we need to fit those together and work through those. Then there's issues of integrity. We talked about what is required from our trainees, what is required from our developing clergy, what is done, what is being reported. We talked about the limitations of technology and library resources. And then that last part that I'm really passionate about is that we don't do well. And I'm not just talking about Africa. I'm talking about across the globe, within our educational systems. We don't do well to measure our projected outcomes. We'd like to see clergy have a set of outcomes when they finish their course of study programs. But what we don't do well is we don't measure that. And the best way to do that is to pair all trainee clergy with capable and willing mentors. And that's a whole conversation by itself. And so those are some of the possible responses. We're talking about administration, understanding and explaining the requirements, et cetera, et cetera.